Hello everyone, this is part 18 of What If Naruto Got Lost During His Training TS, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. Previously on Lost. A second after walking into the shadow, Naruto walked out of another shadow. He found himself in a wheat field, one that didn't look like it was doing so well, but a wheat field nonetheless. That sure is a lot of wheat, only thing missing is the chocolate and the koala. Naruto mentally said. Naruto was just outside the capital of Komugi no Kuni. Around him were acres upon acres of wheat fields, most of which had seen better days. They looked as if they had been allowed to grow and rot on their own. Naruto was half expecting to be jumped by some monster hiding in the wheat field, which none did, fortunately. Before doing anything else, Naruto created some cage bushin, and had them all scour the countryside, or at least the area around the capital. Naruto wanted to know what the geography looked like, as well as the nature that the country had. He wanted to know if the country had any agricultural problems, but seeing all the wheat, he doubted that the country could have any food shortages. Some of his clones puffed and sent him what they had found. Based on the results of the basic recon mission he had sent his clones on, there were a few small farms that littered the area around the capital, but there wasn't a single soul in any of them, be it human or animal. Naruto then instructed the remaining clones to disguise themselves into mercenaries, and had them go into the capital by any means necessary to find out the situation inside the city. Naruto had a feeling that there was something that really differentiated the country from the others of the 9. Naruto still needed to find out what were the reasons as to why Komugi would choose to go to war, or choose to continue to go to war with the other nations. There had to be some reason, unless they just had nothing better to do with their time, which wasn't likely to be the case. Naruto decided to do some scouting of his own and traveled across the land for around 7 days. On the 7th day, Naruto realized that although the country had some natural resources, had lots of fields worth of wheat and other agricultural plants, none of them seemed to be being used or cared for, at least the ones that Naruto had come across. Naruto moved around within the country, hopping from shadow to shadow. In the other countries, the reason as to why travel took such a short time, instead of what normally would be somewhat long journeys, was that Naruto used his ability to slightly manipulate time. This little ability made travel a whole lot faster. He estimated that if he did not use his ability, getting to where he was at the moment, or reaching the level of progress that he was at would have taken longer than 1 year and 8 months. Due to this time manipulation, Naruto had grown older than he was supposed to be, both physically and mentally, not that his mentality could really get any farther, he was already very mature. The clones that had infiltrated the capital city had learned that it was more or less devoid of people. They had learned that most of the populace had opted to become soldiers and were all stationed along the border. They had taken their families with them. There had always been an overabundance of food in the country, practically more than enough to feed more than one country, so one of the country's past daimyos had decided that he wanted to share the wealth, not exactly share, but conquer the other 8 lands, then share the wealth. For the success of conquering all the lands, the daimyo offered high salaries for anyone that wished to join the army. This high salary was what attracted most of the country's farmers. Without farmers to tend to the crops were left to their own devices. A farmer and his family did not get much for their crops due to the overabundance of it. What crops were grown by the border near all fighting. What farmers existed also were near the border. The excess from these farms were secretly sold on the black market to fund the war. The daimyo, his family, and a few nobles were the only ones left in the capital, which was defended by around 10 samurai clans. The clones found this out by pretending to have come from lands beyond the war, and were interested in the rather generous leader and his plans for his country. The daimyo, a rather vain individual, believing that his war that his ancestors started was still the right way to go, had explained everything to the clone. Only the borders really saw much bloodshed, only the lands over in those parts were poisoned by the blood of hundreds and thousands. But the rest of the land of the country still experienced or underwent some form of decay. This was due to nothing and nobody paying them any mind or importance. The daimyo did not enjoy wasted resources, so he had all measure of things done to the fields. Most of these things allowed only pre-existing crops to grow, but nothing new aside from weeds. The crops and the weeds sapped out the nutrients in the soil, which in some cases visibly showed the decay. The daimyo did not want to sell the wheat to the black market for more gold, due to the facility that he knew that his country's crops would be used to feed the armies of his enemies. Ever since almost all of the farmers had dropped the plows and taken up swords, the price for living had shot up in the country, further giving an importance to gold. Farmers were not given the gold of what they had grown, they were only given enough supplies to survive and continue providing for those that had gold. The high salaries of the soldiers were used to pay for their lives, and continued health of their families. Every generation of such a strange practice caused each generation to grow weaker for some reason, and the daimyo was too caught up in his crusade to spread the wealth to do anything about it. With this dilemma at hand, Naruto couldn't really think of any way for him to manipulate the daimyo into forming an alliance with the other countries. If he attacked the borderlands, it wouldn't be any different from the other 8 lands attacking, which was a very common occurrence. If he attacked the wheat fields, the daimyo wouldn't really care all that much. If he attacked the capital and didn't really take anything or anyone, that would catch the daimyo's attention, but attention that he didn't really want. If he somehow caused a strike to happen due to the high prices of commodities, or due to unavailability of food, the daimyo would just have those people killed and just raise salaries again. 2 weeks after arriving in Komugi no Kuni, Naruto decided that wandering around wasn't doing him any good, so he built a base in the only barren wasteland in the country that he could find. For him it would take just a week to get to the capital, but anyone else that wasn't on his side it would take at least a month. His distance from one of the borders, specifically the border to what would be his next destination, was over 3 months away even for him, but to regular people, it would take twice as long or more to get there. His base was built on cracked earth, possibly at one point in time it had been a lake bed, but due to the evidence of past existence of wheat fields, it was a great possibility that the water was sucked up by all the plant life, and when the plant life had exhausted their water supply they too sd. Naruto really didn't have to worry much about the land around his base. He had a world's worth of food and other things, people included, well, more like clones. He sent some clones out to see if there was anyone out in the rest of the country who was trying to make a living out of farming. If they found any, they would be offered a much more meaningful life or existence. It was up to the clones how they would be recruited as long as they were recruited. Then one day 2 weeks after the base was built, Naruto recalled that one of the officers in his armies was a former farmer of Komugi. He was the flight commander of Nasu's Dragon Corps, Kuriku Yuji. That person would be best suited to being in charge of the Komugi base, since he was more familiar with the country than Naruto was. No matter how many clones Naruto spammed, they would still not be able to compare to an actual native. So he sent for some dragons, then had Yuji sent over as well. Once Yuji arrived on his dragon, Naruto informed him of the present situation, or lack thereof. Even with the arrival of Yuji, and the successful recruitment of some other locals, Naruto still couldn't come up with anything. That was until he heard some of the farmers talking. After seeing the dragons, looked upon them in awe, then they told one another, as well as some of the clones, about the myths surrounding dragons that they knew of. Most of the myths were about how dragons would terrorize farms by burning crops, then demand maiden as SS in order for them to stop burning the fields. Seeing the dragons, the farmers believed that those myths were actually real, although the descriptions of the dragon in the stories were different from what Naruto's dragons looked like. After hearing such things, Naruto remembered some of the things that he had learned and somehow not bothered to look over for ideas. His studies in mythology apparently would help him, sort of, at least they would have if he had thought of his plan before hearing the farmers tell their tales. When Yuji decided to ask Naruto about the dragons on behalf of the farmers, Naruto told him that they were the cousins of the native dragons of the lands that they lived in. Naruto said that his dragons were the descendants of one of Ryo-Wo's western cousins. When asked how he knew that, Naruto explained that he had met the Dragon King at one point in time. That little tidbit would in the future become known as one of the theories as to how Naruto lived for so long. Naruto's plan consisted of having Yuji and the dragons terrorize the farms by burning the crops. This would cause the daimyo to have to form an alliance with Nasu, who was aware of someone using the same dragons. But Naruto would not implement his plan until after he had gotten his toehold in the remaining 3 countries. Naruto informed Yuji of his plan, and that he would contact him the moment that it was to be implemented. His focus for the time being would be to train any new recruits or soldiers sent his way in how to handle the dragons. Kumogi and Nasu would be Naruto's dragon bases. He had thought of using sandfish in Tenshi ni Kuni, but decided not to due to the problems that they would cause for his army, that and it was a really bad idea. 1 week later Yuji had under his command a flight of 100 dragons and their riders. The other bases had sent over some people that were interested in riding dragons, or just flying. Dragons, though more temperamental than rocks, were easier to handle. Attacking from a dragon's back was also easier, especially with the special crossbows and their special bolts. Naruto's mage clones had managed to find a way to mass-produce elemental crossbow bolts that could be used by regular human riders. Naruto's forces in Naya, Nasu, Tetsu, Sakura, Tenshi, and Kumogi were not doing anything other than training. They were ordered to prepare for the mass attacks that Naruto had planned for the future. Due to some of the things that Naruto's forces had done, the bases were able to recruit even more people. Some of them were even able to locate and convince some wandering, misplaced, and nomadic clans and families to join in. Naruto, being satisfied with Yuji's progress, decided it was time to leave Kumogi for the next country, Sakana no Kuni, a country where fish farms were supposed to be found almost everywhere. It was also a country with many lakes. Naruto left the base by sinking into the soil outside the base. While he was slowly sinking into the earth, water started to flow out of the spot that he was going into. This water caused the cracked earth to moisten and become muddy. Once Naruto was fully submerged in the earth, the base had a moat surrounding it. Yuji was left to wonder how he had done that, since he had never actually witnessed Naruto do something like that before. So he decided to contact the other bases and ask around. The only ones that had actually seen Naruto do something like that were Tamatsu's group and Tsukiko. Tamatsu witnessed Naruto walk into a shadow, while Tsukiko and Yoshiko experienced something like it when Naruto and them escaped the pit in Tetsu. A few minutes after merging with the earth, Naruto found himself shooting through the surface of one of the lakes that dotted the Sakana countryside. Why did he shoot through the surface when he could have just melded with the water or something like that? Simple, because for some reason, the water was just too polluted for him to want to merge with it. He floated on top of the lake surface and looked around. As far as normal eyes could see was water, murky black water, that smelled of waste and death. As he walked on the water surface, he noticed that there was something aside from fish floating in it. There were boss of the S. Naruto quickly recognized a mystery that needed to be solved. Why are there so many corpses here? Why were they dumped here instead of buried? What could have caused these people to have SD? Naruto wondered. All of the boss that Naruto had encountered were the boss of men and boys. There was not a single body of a woman in the water. Maybe I've wandered into the country where the Amazons are in or have conquered or something. Naruto wondered again. He quickly made his way to the shore of the lake, no longer having the ability to stomach the sight of so many S. On the shore of the lake there was a small fishing village. It wasn't as deserted as he expected it to be. After drying himself, he walked into the village to investigate the phenomenon of people willingly living in a place so close to so many deaths. Instead of asking around, Naruto decided to observe the people from the safety of the rooftops, by transforming himself into a tabby cat. One of the things he noticed was that there were a lot of cats, but most of them were sickly and of poor health, which was probably due to eating fish. The people, as Naruto observed, looked just as sickly. Most of the populace were men, very few women could be seen walking around, the only ones that made their presence known in the village were old women. Naruto observed a bit longer for roughly a whole week, until an event that shed some light as to why there were boss in the water. At the end of the week of Naruto's observation, a caravan from somewhere else in the country arrived with wagon loads of cadavers. Due to the bloating of the boss in the water, Naruto failed to notice that all the boss were actually of people that had SD of poor health. He walked over to where the boss were being brought, then he watched and listened to what the people were saying. Naruto heard mutters or whispers of things being said. From the waters you came, now you return, were the things being said to the boss as they were being thrown in the water. After staying in the village for a week, Naruto pondered those words. He noticed while he was musing that the people ate fish, and only fish, be they fish that were caught living, or plucked out of the water. It was no wonder so many were sick and diseased. Their source of sustenance was the polluted lake itself. Naruto needn't have wondered if that was the case with the rest of the country, since the wagon drivers looked like they suffered from sickness or poisoning themselves. Naruto was able to figure out what the people meant by what they said. In some places it is believed that seafood, or in this case fish, causes more boys to be born than girls, therefore the S-men and boys were returned to where they came from. Most likely SL women and girls were the ones returned to the earth. Naruto's next dilemma was that if there were so many men how could the country afford to stay in a war that had lasted for centuries? Naruto needed to do more research, that is why he decided to leave the village and follow the caravan back to where it came from. Along the way Naruto noticed that there was a lack of any other animal life. It was entirely possible for the people to have exhausted their land fauna a long time ago, which caused the animals to have all gone extinct in that part of the world. No new animals would go to the country and willingly live in it due to the stench of death that the land and water had. Since Naruto didn't know where the caravan was going, he could not use his time manipulation ability. The caravan took 3 months to get to where it was going, which was the capital of Sakana no Kuni. It was a hustling and bustling city filled with life, sort of. The people that were walking around were all sickly. Naruto wondered if the daimyo was just as sickly as the rest of the population. He wasn't. The daimyo was a healthy individual, the other nobles were all healthy people. It seemed that long ago the ruling class of Sakana no Kuni had realized that the S-lakes were a source of death and not life, so they had been buying food from the black market and leaving the rest of the population to their helplessness. While walking around the city in his feline form, Naruto was able to find and infiltrate the city's military facility, which not surprisingly surrounded the daimyo's castle and the compounds of the noble clans. They were the barrier between the commoners and the elite, they were the middle ground. While Naruto did his little spy mission, he noticed that the soldiers also looked to be healthy, even though they were eating fish that obviously came from one of the S-lakes. Naruto wondered what it was that the men took that made them as healthy as a horse, despite their obvious food poison street. So Naruto decided to further look into things by creating cage bushins in feline form to scout out the rest of the military facility alongside him. This spy operation yielded much success after a few short hours. Naruto's little operation discovered that Sakana no Kuni used a version of hero water to keep the troops healthy enough for battle. Unlike hero water, this version did not give inhuman strength and abilities, it just made the drinkers healthy no matter what they ate, but due to how much poison their boss consumed, the poison eventually overrode the effects of the water. After a soldier started to display signs of unhealthiness, they were made to drink the water again. After having to drink the water 9 times, their boss would grow slightly immune to the effects of the water. On the 10th time that the soldier drank the water, or even before that, they would find themselves in the cold embrace of death. Naruto didn't need to know why the government didn't mind losing many people almost weekly to death and disease, because it was obvious to anyone with eyes and ears, the country was filled with people, the birth rate was just as high as the death rate. Naruto, wanting to know what the exact statistics were, looked for a records office or archives, and found out that the birth-to-death ratio was 4 to 1. 4 births for every death. Naruto realized that even though it was highly possible for fish and seafood kinds of food to give the male gender a higher chance of being born, there was no way normal fish could also give rise to such a high birth rates. For one thing, the sly food wouldn't be able to give enough energy for anyone to go at it like rabbits, and second, the food would also not give children the nutrients they needed to grow up and survive. When Naruto thought of that last part, he realized that he had not actually seen one child in the whole time that he had spent in Sakana, none in the village, none in the other places that his 3 months of walking had passed by, and none in the city except for the children of the nobles. Where then were all the children? The boss of the young boys that he had seen in the lake were those of boys in their teen. There wasn't a single child floating around in some lake in the country. So where were all the children? That was something that Naruto would find out. Naruto wouldn't be able to do any more investigating on his own, so he decided to build his base and get his army into the country. More people equals more chances of finding the missing children. It also means that solving the mystery of how there can be an overpopulation with all the fish and polluted water lying around the countryside. So Naruto plopped his base in the middle of a lake. He built it underwater by becoming the water. Even though it was polluted, it was a job that he just had to do. Becoming the water was better than having to go swimming. The base from the outside looked like a series of bubbles that littered the lake bed and were interconnected with one another with some tubes. Just to make his base fit, Naruto made the lake deeper and had to add a lot more water as to not show that it had gotten deeper and to hide his base of operations more. Since his base was underwater, he got to use his super crocs. These crocs of his were all genetically altered in such a way that they were made to be stronger, faster, and able to eat literally anything. The acids in the guts could digest a diamond should they ever eat one. Somehow the guts could extract nutrients and the like from even that. Once Naruto got his crocs, he set them loose into the lake to do cleanup for him. He made sure that they left the surface of the lake alone, in order for it to retain the illusion that it was still filled with the S. Once the water a few feet below the surface was cleaned up of rotting corpses and S-fish, Naruto created a magic-based barrier that separated the lower half of the lake's water from the upper death-filled half. In his side, Naruto imported some of his fish, so that the lake would have a bit more life in it. Naruto's base finished construction 1 week after his arrival at the capital, his spy operation not even taking up the whole day. It took a whole week because, for one thing, it was underwater, another thing was that it took the crocs some time to clean the water, and lastly, when the base was completed, Naruto still had to decide where things would go. It was a relatively big base after all. The lake, if one were to look at a cross-section of it, would see that it was shaped like an hourglass. Literally half of the water was S, while the other half was filled with life. From his new base of operations, his only base of operations in Sakana, which was located in the lake that he had first popped out of, he sent out squads of clones to search the entire country for the whereabouts of the children. Even with all the snooping, Naruto was unable to find hide nor hair of any of the children, or even any mothers or expecting mothers for that matter. After a whole month of failure, Naruto decided that the situation called for some drastic measures. He would send out disguised clones to actually interview the populace. He knew that there was a big possibility that very few people would know where and what Naruto was looking for was located, but Naruto believed that there was a possibility that at least one clone would get a clue. While his clones would be doing that, Naruto would be doing what he loved to do since Sakura no Kuni. He'd go visit the daimyo, or at least try to, that is if he could find an actual reason to. Damn, I don't have a reason to go. I need a valid one, else, nah won't think about that, maybe. Nah, don't need another daughter right now, a son would just be creepy in its own way. What to do, were the thoughts that were flowing through Naruto's mind. After consulting with some Kage Bushin, which didn't help since those were exact replicas of him, he decided to just go with his gut feelings. So Naruto shadow walked his way back to the capital. Instead of walking out of a shadow in the city proper, he walked out of a shadow inside the castle itself. Unluckily for him, it was in a locked closet. But just as he was about to go back into the shadow, the closet doors were opened, and his ears ended up ringing. Next thing he knew he was lying in a bed with someone leaning over him wiping non-existing sweat of his brow. He realized that it was a girl, probably the one that had found him in the closet. She had a wide forehead, a small heart-shaped face, a sharp chin, and curvaceous lips. She had green eyes, and surprisingly long bubblegum pink hair. Naruto let his eyes travel up and down her body just to see what kind of figure she had. Being in a somewhat delusional state, Naruto allowed his sight to be that of the wind, so that he could see beyond her clothes and what they were hiding. A few seconds of peeping later, Naruto had a nosebleed, which was noticed by the girl, who immediately thought that he was even more sick, health-wise, and made him take some awfully tasting medicine. She then said some things to make him feel at ease, or at least tried to. Naruto had subconsciously altered his appearance. He made himself look younger, probably as young as the girl or rather young woman that was tending to him. If Naruto was his female tribute to his kind of kitsune past, his current form was the male version, complete with ebony black hair. Later that same day, Naruto decided that being treated like a sick person was just too much for him. Enough was enough, so he got out of bed, but before he could take one step, he was tackled by the young woman that was trying her best to make him healthy, which wasn't really needed since it was nearly impossible for Naruto to get sick, poisoned, drugged, or even drunk. They ended up lying on the bed, with the girl on top of him. Naruto decided then and there that he would play God, and make himself a son, just like Naruto, except the process would be taken out of time since Naruto more or less knew how to do it in real time. So that's how it was. Naruto slipped into the shadows, and left his son to do all the work. I hope this works, he thought, as went back to base. His made-up plan had better work, cause he really didn't want to have to make another one, just to kill someone from the castle like he was originally going to do. Back with the two people in bed. The girl couldn't think of anything to say once she noticed the position she was in. Naruto's son said, see, could you please get off me? Realizing the compromising position she was in, she quickly got off of him. Why you shouldn't get out of bed? You're not well. What kind of a person hides in a closet anyway? What kind of person assumes that someone else is sick for just being in a closet? You collapsed, what else was I supposed to think? I dunno. See, so it's not my fault that I thought that you were sick. What kind of a person hides in a closet anyway? Well, not me. It was an accident really. Oto-sama was trying to send me to the daimyo's courtroom, but I guess he misjudged the distance or something. How? Oh, magic of course. Don't you know what that is? Of course I know what magic is, it's a bunch of tricks and illusions, but I guess that would explain how you got into my closet. Why were you supposed to speak to the daimyo anyway? Oto-sama wanted me to ask him where all the children were, he hasn't seen any in the country. Oh, you're not from here, are you? So where are you from? Naya, Nasu, Sakura, Tenshi, where? She asked him excitedly. You wouldn't have heard of the place. Oto-sama has been traveling the 9 lands looking for somewhere to settle in, or something like that. Oh, you still haven't answered my question. Where are you from? Hi no Kuni. It's quite far from here. I've never heard of it. So you've been in more places than the 9. That's wonderful. Can you tell me anything about the other countries? Please. The only thing I know is that there's a war. Sure. But can you tell me where all the children are? Tell me first, then you'll find out. Alright, you know you sound like Oto-sama's sensei. How's that? He used to tell him things, and leave some parts out, but when Oto-sama asked him what those things are, he always said that he'd tell Oto-sama when he SD, and asked him if he wanted to find out. Oh, well I'm not threatening to KU you know. Yeah, are you just going to stand there? No, she said, then she sat down beside him on the bed. I don't really want to ruin your mood or anything, but I've really not seen very nice things from the other countries. Naya works very closely with the slave trade, Nasu does that too, Tetsu, well Tetsu is not somewhere I want to be in again the way it is now, that country is far too barbaric and cannibalistic for my tastes. Sakura is the most beautiful place I've ever seen in my life, its countryside is filled with sakura trees, but in its underbelly lies a monster of hate and tea. Tenshi's people literally look like Tenshi, but on the other hand they are devils in disguise. While Komugi is very wasteful of its natural resources and of its people. That's really bad. Do you know anything about the resistance movements in the country? I've heard a bit about them, but nothing really in depth. I know about them, why? Cause even though I'm supposed to marry the daimyo, I'm a member of Sakana no Kuni's rebel forces. I'm a spy. Aren't you glad you met me? That will be all for this video, be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos, goodbye.